Hello. So today we are going to be working on a winter sakura or winter cherry blossom inspired nail design. I've already started by painting my nails a red color. I actually painted them using I think it used to be called like a peanut butter and jelly or a jelly sandwich technique. A few years ago, it was popular where you would put a color and then your glitter and then the color so that the glitter was just peeking through a little bit. I chose that for this look to give the hint of holiday spirit, but not full-on glitter that might take away from the design itself. You could do this design with other colors in the background. I chose red as my background because it's December, it's approaching Christmas. So I wanted to give that hint there again. Additionally, when doing a little bit of research on this look, I found a photo where there was a tree with red leaves in the background and then the cherry blossoms in front of it. So I kind of wanted to base this design really kind of heavily on that photo. So that is the design we'll be working on here today. So today I will be working with acrylic paints. On my palette here, I've loaded up white, a primary red, which as I've said in previous videos is a not a true red. It's a more of a magenta-y, pinky kind of red. I have black, I have brown, yellow, and green. So what I'm going to do for this design is we're going to have the blossom kind of rising over the cuticle, almost like a sunrise or sunset. So we're going to add 3 petals. All right, and they don't have to be super neat because with the next technique we're going to use, we can clean up that shape a little bit. And in fact, we need to clean up that shape a little bit. So we're going to let that dry. I'm going to apply another coat to bring up the opacity on this, and we'll be back. So that has completely dried. I've added a couple extra layers to increase the opacity so you're not seeing the red peeking through from behind. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this is a cuticle pushing tool that I will use oftentimes to clean up my design. Okay, so this is a tool that I will often use to clean up my designs. I don't often use it for cuticle pushing because it can be a little rough. You could also use an orange stick. My orange stick is kind of dirty because I also use that for cleaning up purposes. And what I'm going to do is you can clean up any mistakes you may have made. So like here, I have a little extra that I don't really want. So I'm just going to kind of scratch that off. And this is something that you can only really do with acrylic paint. I mean, there may be some other mediums you can use, but it's not going to work for nail polish. So you're going to make sure your base color is applied, completely dry, top coated, and then you're using acrylic paint to paint your nail. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little chunk out of the end of the petal to create the kind of iconic cherry blossom shape. And you could try and paint this on directly from the very beginning. However, I've been trying to do that for this tutorial actually, and it's proven to be, for me, quite difficult. So I figure I'll show you a slightly different technique to achieve what you want. That is actually the most successful cherry blossom shape I've had since since starting this tutorial. So I would recommend that method if you feel you can paint it on straight away. Feel free, but this is the technique that has worked the best for me. Now to finish this design, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a dark color. I'm actually going to use the same color that I used for the branches of the cherry blossom tree. And to recap, that is a brown mixed with black. And we're going to go ahead and add a couple little dots just for the implied center of the flower. And I'm going to call that design good. If you don't want to do a more stylized version, there is another way to do it that I've seen actually done by another nail artist here on YouTube. Her name is Robin Moses, and I will try to remember to link her in my description, so you can go check her out if you'd like. She does a little bit more, I would argue, a little bit more realistic looking cherry blossom, or she has a more of a way to do a 5-petaled flower, which is appropriate for when you're trying to do this cherry blossom look. So I've just put in my stems here, and gonna let those dry. I don't recall if she does stems first or not, but I will show you now how she does the petals. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to do the petals now. I've just put in the stems here. Now when she shows how to do these flowers, she seems to give each petal a slightly different shape, and that helps, in my opinion, add dimension and a realness to the flower. If you look at a flower in real life, it's rarely ever perfectly symmetrical with petals that are all perfectly the same size when it's naturally growing on a tree. I mean, if you pull it out and you lay it flat, like if you're pressing a flower, then it might look that way. But just in nature, like if you look at a photograph of a flower, it's 9 times out of 10 it's not going to look that way. So she'll usually do like this back petal, kind of what you would consider a petal shape. She might do this petal over here a little thinner. She'll usually do like a squashed or an oval shaped petal here. That kind of gives it the impression of it coming towards you, that petal coming towards you. And then another like thin petal down here. So like too thick, too thin, and then a squash petal. And that kind of gives an angle or a dimension to it. I'll just go over these as needed to help with their opacity. And while that's drying, I did put a little stem down here so I could put in a little bud. And when you do a bud, it's not just necessarily going to be just a dot. I mean, it could be if your nails are small enough, but if you ever look at a bud, it's a bunch of little petals kind of balling in on each other. So you can do like a small petal, a larger petal, and if you have room, a third petal, to kind of give that impression of the bud, or maybe it's just starting to open up kind of aesthetic. So I'm going to go ahead and let these dry. I'm going to apply another coat to make these more opaque, and we'll be back. All right, we're back. I've added another coat to these. Now, while this is still drying, I want to add, as I did for this other blossom, a little bit of a darker pink to the center of these. Because when you look at a cherry blossom, they oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes have a darker pink in the center, and I feel like that'll help give it the appearance, that cherry blossom type appearance. I'll also add a little bit of that to the base of this little bud here. All right, so we're going to let that dry, and we will come back to add some more details to these in a bit. Now that our cherry blossom has had a chance to dry a little bit, we're going to go ahead and add the little stamen. And I've mixed up a light brown, darkish yellow color. We're just going to go ahead and dot that on. That'll help fortify the look of this being a flower. And there we have that nail. All that's left to do with that nail is to let it dry and top coat it. Okay, so while we're waiting for these other two nails to finish drying, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my third design for this nail art here. And so this will be, this design is most inspired by that photo that I found online. So this would be if you were to see the sakura tree from far away. And so if you look at, when you look at a cherry blossom tree or a cherry tree, the bark and the branches oftentimes look very dark. So this is not quite a black color I've loaded up here. I've actually added a little bit of brown, a little bit of red, and I've watered it down so it flows nicely, but it does pretty much look like black. So we're going to go ahead and make our little spindly branches here. And you don't have to paint every single branch that's going to have flowers on it. I'm going to show you how we can kind of imply that there's branches there that maybe we don't see. There we have our branch started. Clean up over here a little bit. And so when you're working with flowers that are this small, we're not going to be able to draw in individual petals or anything like that. So all I'm going to do to kind of give the implication of the flowers is use a dotting tool with that very light pink color and just dot in where flowers might be and see how they might be even floating off of the branches. They don't have to be right on top of the branches, just to give the impression that they're there. So that is how I would do just the more abstract, simple, far away view of the cherry blossoms. If you want, you can take a little bit of that green and add in a couple little pops of the green to imply a couple little leaves poking out, but you don't have to. So that is probably the simplest design right there. That is done outside of needing top coat. So we'll go ahead and top coat this and we'll be back. All right, we're back. And I have top coated. These are all finished. So here are, again, the finished 3 nail designs for the winter sakura theme. On the ring finger, I have a stylized version of the sakura based off of images I saw while in Japan. In the middle finger, I have a slightly more realistic version based off of techniques that I learned from Robin Moses nail art. And on my pointer finger, I have more zoomed out, just tree branch or sakura cherry blossom tree branch, more abstractly indicated. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something, and I thank you very much for watching.